What's up YouTube? Capital G here. It is Sunday, boys, so you guys know what that means. That means we got a brand new card from Raging Tempest to discuss and go over, and this is a brand new Foolish Burial card. It's actually pretty interesting and actually really solid. This is the artwork right here, which is, it's pretty much what you would expect from a Foolish Burial card. If you look at the other artworks from like Foolish Burial or Foolish Return or whatnot, you've got the token hand in the grave, and he's like, hey, I'm not dead yet, don't throw me in the freaking grave. You've got the obviously the tombstone there, and even the effect is pretty much what you'd expect. Like if I gave most of you guys, like 99% of you guys, if I gave you 5 guesses, you'd be able to guess this card. And I simply say that because Foolish Burial already dumps monsters into the graveyard, so the next logical step would just be one that dumps either spells and traps in the graveyard, and thank God this one does both, because I don't think I'd want to play a Foolish Burial that just dumps spells or just dump traps. Like this one does both of them, so it is a card that I would say is good, but it's definitely a card that's like long overdue, especially when you consider that Foolish Burial came out in 2007. I mean, damn guys, by the time we get Raging Tempest in the TCG, that's gonna be 10 years. Like it took them 10 years to give us a Foolish Burial for spells or traps. Like, come on, man, it shouldn't take you a full decade for that. But anyways, let's go ahead and look at the card. It's a normal spell card. You can only activate one Foolish Burial of Belongings per turn. Send one spell or trap card from your deck to the graveyard. And this is just a very practical card with a lot of applications. This is not going to be a review that takes like 10-15 minutes or anything like that, because this is only one line of text for the most part. And the first deck that instantly came to my mind, by the way, thank you for my stream for helping me figure out all the nice decks that you could run this in. And yeah, the card's already on YGO Pro, by the way. The first deck that popped into my mind was Monarchs, because I was like, oh, so I get to send Pantheism to the graveyard? That's pretty cool. I can send Prime to the graveyard. Like Monarchs is a deck that have 2 spells and traps that want to be sent to the graveyard. You know, that's pretty good. Actually, there are a couple more. You could send like Frostblast, I think it is, to the graveyard. The one that pops like spells and traps. You'd be able to send that one to the graveyard as well. But then there's actually another, well, actually not another, but a few more decks that you could run this in. Some of them are just blatantly obvious. The first blatantly obvious one, and I didn't even think about it, I felt kind of stupid, is Paleozoic. Paleozoic, you guys know, the entire archetype is made of traps. Well, they've got a couple of Exceed monsters that you make with the traps, but Paleozoic, this card would essentially count as another Paleozoic. You wouldn't be able to, you know, set it and activate it as you would a normal Paleozoic, but being able to send any of these to the graveyard, because we all know that they activate from the graveyard and they just summon themselves, is actually pretty good. And especially it's good when you combine it with something like Card of Demise, because sometimes with Card of Demise, you know, your back row is kind of clogged and you're not able to set everything. But with Foolish Burial of Belongings, you could just turn that into another Paleozoic monster in the graveyard. So it allows you, I guess, ideally to maybe thin your deck of a card. Or so I don't know how many Foolish Burial Belongings I would run, maybe like one copy, like a tech copy or something like that. But just being able to dump any of Paleozoic because they're going to be summoned back from the graveyard is pretty solid. Another deck I think this is stupidly good in is Metalfoes. It's crazy because I thought about this one and I was like, hold on. So if I activate this and I just send Metalfoes Fusion to the graveyard, can't I just put Metalfoes Fusion back in my deck and then this card basically counted as an upstart? Like, you really could just do that, guys. Like, I'm not going to say that that could be an engine or anything, but I mean, hypothetically, you could just splash 3 copies of Foolishes and or 3 Foolish and, you know, like 1 Metalfoes Fusion, and you could dump the same Metalfoes Fusion over and over again and keep putting it back in your deck to draw cards. But obviously in Metalfoes you can send these cards to the graveyard as well, so you know, that's pretty cool. These cards obviously search other Metalfoes, so I definitely would run this card in Metalfoes just because I've got 3 solid targets and one of them just lets me instantly draw. I think it could be decent in Dark Lords, because sometimes Dark Lords you have your monsters on the board early and you don't necessarily have any of your Dark Lord spells or traps. This sends one straight from your deck to the graveyard so that you can obviously use your Dark Lords to activate them. It's sneakily, like, it's on the low. It's kind of sneaky good and Psyframes. I say that because you obviously know that Psyframe Overload, you can banish that from the graveyard to add, like, you know, a Psyframe card. You can get your Circuit, you can get any of your monsters or whatever. But there's this card as well, Rise of the Full Height. This card's really good with Omega. It basically creates a loop where you banish this card from the graveyard, and then your opponent doesn't get to use their battle phase that next turn. And if you have Omega, you can keep putting this in the graveyard, and you basically make it so that your opponent can just never attack you. And you can kind of do the same thing with Overload, where you can just constantly search over and over and over again. The card is super good, and Phantom Knights, this is another one where I think it can just be really good, because we know that all the Phantom Knight spells and traps can be banished to summon the monster. So like, that's just an easy interaction. And I think there's actually some possible uses for Cardians. Cardians have a couple of cards that you know, can summon monsters from the hand. You've got this card right here, Hanazumi, which actually can get you one of your Cardians from the graveyard and put it back in the hand, so that actually kind of works. And then there's a couple of rogue options, like I think Reload is good enough where maybe you might want to tech one copy in Volcanics just to see if you can get that reload into the graveyard early, just because Reload can be used during both players' turns from the graveyard. So being able to, like, you know, scatter shot your opponent, it's still pretty damn devastating. I think that's definitely good. And then somebody brought up Interrupted Slumber. I mean, it seems okay, just being able to tutor a kaiju monster. I'm not sure if I would run Foolish Burial just for like Interrupted Slumber unless I was running kaijus, but in general I do think that this card has a lot of applications. There are at least 3 or 4 decks that I could see definitely one copy. I don't think, like, unless there's some crazy loop that pops up, I don't know if I would run multiple copies of this, except maybe in Metalfoes. I can totally see it, because in Metalfoes, like, if it's ever dead, well, no, it shouldn't ever be dead because of Metalfoes Fusion, but just being able to dump these into the graveyard and, you know, activate their effects seems really good as well. So in Metalfoes, or maybe in Paleozoic, even in like Monarchs, I just run like one copy. Now, if if Pantheism was still at 3, then, you know, maybe I might consider maybe like 2 of them or something like that. Even still, that'd probably be like a 1. But this is a card, in my opinion, that is long overdue. And also, my prediction for this card's rarity, I think it is 100% going to be secret rare. I don't think there's any question about it, because if you look at Konami's history recently of cards that they've tried to sort of remake or make different versions of, they generally have been like secret rares. Like if you look at Jar of Avarice, you know, kind of like a new play on Pot of Avarice and Jar of Greed, like those 2 cards combined, that was a secret rare. Honestly, that card had no fucking business being secret, but it was. If you guys looked at Pot of Desires, that was secret rare. That card deserved it in my opinion, but, you know, like, that just goes further proof. So I think that this card is definitely going to be secret. Let me know what you guys think of the card. I think it's fantastic, and subscribe if you have not already. Thumbs up the video if you enjoyed it.